NFL Week 1 is upon us, and I'm going to be ranking every game before they even start based on how I think the matchups will go here in Week 1. Starting in Tier 1 is don't watch, and I'm not saying any of these games are don't watch games. I think everything's worth paying attention to in Week 1, at least until we figure out who these teams are a little bit better. So our first actual game in our actual tier, red zone only, where you should only pay attention to the highlights, is 16 New England at Cincinnati, where I think Cincinnati will win 30-14. This game would be more exciting if Drake May was playing. Alas, we have Jacoby Brissett and all of the wonders that brings. The Bengals haven't performed super well in their last two season openers, but they should be in the driver's seat here against a very weak Patriots squad that should be one of the worst teams in the division. The only good thing is if maybe potentially Drake May starts playing. Some players to watch here, Christian Gonzalez and Joe Burrow. Both of these guys are coming off injury and are looking to continue their great play in the case of Gonzalez or rebound from a slump season in the case of Burrow. Next game I have, number 15, Carolina at New Orleans. I think New Orleans will win 27-21. This has a better chance of being a close game than New England and Cincinnati, but the Panthers were a slog to watch all of last season. This one should be a New Orleans win, but Derek Carr is a thing for underperforming, so we'll see what happens. If the Panthers can step up and silence some of the critics in Week 1, they could be setting themselves up for a little bit more success this season. Players to watch here are Bryce Young, Deontay Johnson, and Chris Olave. Young and Johnson will have to play much better than they did last season to give the Panthers a chance this time. Of course, Deontay Johnson coming to a new team, so maybe that'll give them the spark to step up. Overall, the main thing to watch in this one is just the development of Bryce Young, and this should be a pretty ugly game. I expect New Orleans to handle the Panthers just fine, but if they don't, it could be time to look at New Orleans too, because they're just kind of treading water right now. Up next at number 14, we've got Minnesota at New York Giants, and I think Minnesota will win this game about 17-10 or something like that. This one's going to be pretty ugly, is my guess. Neither defense is great, but the offenses are just pretty abysmal. Unfortunately, with J.J. McCarthy out for the season, we are looking at Sam Darnold in Minnesota likely for the entire season, which he started out okay in Carolina a couple of years back, which is the main reason I'm giving Minnesota the win here, but this one could easily go either way. The players to watch here are Malik Neighbors, Daniel Jones, Justin Jefferson, and Sam Darnold. The subpar quarterbacks on each team will have to make their young star receivers look great for their teams to have any chance, not only in this game but in this season. Jefferson is already proven as a top player, but Neighbors still has a lot to prove, and it's going to be really tough to do that with Daniel Jones under center. And if he can perform with Daniel Jones, I think the Giants may actually start to contend once they have a real quarterback. Number 13, I have Las Vegas at Los Angeles Chargers. I think Los Angeles will win 28-17. This really isn't a bad matchup. It could go either way, but I do think the Chargers are a stronger team. The Raiders probably have the better defense, but the Chargers on the whole are a better team, especially with Justin Herbert there. He really does carry that team. The players to watch here are Justin Herbert and Zamir White. Herbert is coming off injury and will look to take back over, carrying that subpar supporting cast around him. New head coach Jim Harbaugh will also look to prove himself in this one. I think he will be an improvement over Brandon Staley, although that isn't saying too much. And then Zamir White, who is taking over running back one duties from the traded Josh Jacobs. And I think what we saw last season, he was not a bad running back. And if he can really step up, he could help out Gardner Minshew and Devontae Adams in that passing attack and give them a decently balanced offense. Alright, our next tier of games is the watch if you can tier. So if you aren't busy, these aren't bad games to turn on. Number 12 is Washington at Tampa Bay, where I think Tampa Bay will win 24-21. This could be flipped with number 11 here in a second, but the reason both of these are here are they aren't too great of games, but they do have a couple of guys that we really should pay attention to. And in this one, of course, it's Jaden Daniels, the rookie quarterback for Washington. Other players to watch here are Rachaad White and Baker Mayfield. Obviously, paying attention to Jaden Daniels is key, but Rachaad White could really help the Bucs, and Baker Mayfield, if he continues to play well, could give the Bucs a pretty potent offense. Last season it wasn't too bad, and Rachaad White continuing his hot streak from the end of last season is the main story on the ground side of things. Number 11, I have Denver at Seattle, and I actually think Denver will win this one, 21-17, playing with a little bit of fire with the new starting quarterback, Bo Nix, the rookie. This is becoming kind of a rivalry here after the Russell Wilson trade and how that went down the drain pretty quickly. I expect both of these teams to finish below 500, and I'm definitely not very bullish on the Seahawks this year. A lot of people are expecting them to be decent. I really don't see it too much. They have a decent group here, but Geno Smith doesn't impress me very much. He's certainly not a bad quarterback, but I don't think he's getting them anywhere special. And then the people around him, Jackson Smith and Jigba won't be too bad. And DK Metcalf, of course, is always pretty good, but he's never as dominant as people would expect. Like I said, I do think Denver will get the win here, not necessarily because they're a better team. I think these teams are very even. But I do think Bo Nix will have a pretty decent showing here in the first game and maybe give the Broncos fans a bit of hope. Players to watch here are Bo Nix, Javonte Williams, and Geno Smith. I'm putting a lot of quarterbacks here, and that's because in week one, watching quarterbacks is pretty vital, especially unproven guys like Bo Nix and even Geno Smith to an extent, especially after last season where he kind of took a step back in terms of production and quality of play. And then Javonte Williams, he's just a really key guy. He is a running back who is kind of going to determine the Broncos season, I think, because if he plays well, I think he can really give Bo Nix a chance to shine. Bo Nix, a guy who kind of needs that supporting cast. He's a good player, but if he can get some good production on the ground, I think he can really help Denver become a pretty decent team here. Number 10, I have Arizona at Buffalo, where I think Buffalo will win 30-20. I think there's a good chance Arizona puts up a fight here, but I also think there's a good chance Buffalo blows them out. The good thing is both of these teams are pretty entertaining to watch no matter what. Even if it isn't a close score, the offenses are pretty fun and should light things up. I really like Kyler Murray, and I'm higher on him than most people are. I think he's a really good quarterback and can kind of show that this season, especially with Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in. Players to watch are Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Khalil Shakir for me. If Kyler and Harrison can both be in sync this season, the Arizona offense may actually be pretty good. And I think that Khalil Shakir's play will be vital in helping the Buffalo offense succeed. Although this could go either way, it could also go to Keon Coleman or Curtis Samuel. But if one of those guys can step up into a true wide receiver one role, I think it will greatly help the Buffalo offense succeed. And I just don't think they can just rely on Dalton Kincaid to be their only strong receiving option. Number 9 matchup, I have Pittsburgh at Atlanta. Both of these teams are starting new quarterbacks, Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh and Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. Both of these guys will need to be pretty productive for the offenses to work. But particularly in Atlanta, the pieces are all there for Kirk Cousins to put together a pretty good offense. I don't think this game will be too high scoring. I have Atlanta winning 21-20. But it could be, just depending on how these teams play. Pittsburgh tends to keep the score pretty low, and my players to watch here are Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Kyle Pitts, and TJ Watt. Cousins needs to up his production for Pitts if Atlanta really wants to get the offense rolling. If Pitts can start playing, then I think the Atlanta offense will truly start working. Drake London is in that conversation as well for me. And then Russ has to show some improvement if he wants to fend off Justin Fields for the starting role. TJ Watt is just a really good player and really fun to watch, which is why I have him on the players to watch here. And then just in general, both of these teams need their offense to step up. The Pittsburgh defense has been really solid just consistently for the last so many years now. But if their offense steps up, I think both of these teams really can be sort of contenders here. Number 8, I have Tennessee at Chicago, where I think Chicago will win 28-21. This game could be pretty ugly, but of course the main storyline here is Caleb Williams coming into his first game, highly touted, really electric guy, played really well in college, and the Bears are kind of hoping he saves the franchise here. Will Levis, also in Tennessee, is really exciting. He played pretty well a little bit in a few games last season, and then was kind of disappointing after his rip-roaring start. Players to watch are Caleb Williams and Will Levis for me. Both of these players are essential to the success of their teams. The Bears have all the pieces in place for Williams, aside from potentially an offensive line, whereas the Titans are kind of the opposite. The O-line should be pretty solid, while the weapons may leave something to be desired. You have an aging DeAndre Hopkins there. He hasn't really slowed down too much, but if Levis can help him, and he can help Levis, and they kind of scratch each other's backs, their offense really could be pretty potent. And then DJ Moore in Chicago can really help out that Caleb Williams in his first few starts. If these offenses get rolling, these teams could actually be pretty decent, especially in the case of Chicago, who should have a pretty solid defense as well. All right, our next tier of games here are must-watch games. You should really watch these games if you can. Number 7 is Jacksonville at Miami, where I think Miami will win 35-27. This game I think is a little lower than the ones above it because I don't fully trust Jacksonville, especially after last season's collapse. Whereas Miami tends to start pretty hot, their offense always putting up a lot of points at the beginning of the year before kind of declining near the end. Players to watch here are Devon Achane, Trevor Lawrence, and Gabe Davis. Achane becoming an explosive RB1 would really help an already electric Miami offense with a ton of speed, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and then Achane also stepping up would make that offense really, really potent and electric. And then Trevor Lawrence, he really needs to bring his play up. He hasn't had the breakout season everyone kind of was expecting. The second half of his 2022 season was solid, and then we thought he was getting there in 2023, and then he really just dropped off. If he can step up, maybe with Gabe Davis there to help him out, then that offense really could get going, but it's all going to depend on Lawrence and how he goes. Then at number 6, I have Dallas at Cleveland, where I think Dallas will win 24-21. And this one could definitely go either way. The reason I'm giving it to Dallas here is I think their offense is just better than the Browns by far. I think if their offense can get in a rhythm and get a few points here and there on that Browns defense, then I think their defense, the Dallas defense, will do enough to keep them in this game. Deshaun Watson, I just haven't seen anything from. I don't think he's going to be great. And while I don't think the Cowboys will be as good this season, I do think they'll be good enough to win games like this where their offense really just has to do a little bit and their defense can kind of help them. It's a lot like last season where their defense can carry them to wins, and then sometimes maybe their offense will show up and also get them some points. But I do see the Cowboys winning this one. The players to watch here are CeeDee Lamb, Deshaun Watson, Myles Garrett, and Kalen Carson. Lamb coming into the season pretty cold after holding out from training camp. Of course, it stands to see. We still haven't seen how much that will affect him and his play. Myles Garrett is just really fun to watch all the time. And then Deshaun Watson, if he doesn't step up and start performing on the field instead of just in massage parlors, then the Browns are really just in trouble here. And I don't know where they go from Deshaun Watson. They have to keep playing him or at least keep employing him because they're paying him so much money. And then we have Kalen Carson, who is a rookie picked in the 5th round for the Cowboys. He'll be filling in for the injured Duron Bland. And he should have a pretty reasonable matchup here. He'll be defending against Amari Cooper and the newly acquired Jerry Jeudy here, and is going to be in tandem with Trayvon Diggs. So we'll just see how he fills in and see if he can keep that defense working while we wait for Duron Bland to return. At number 5 here, I have Green Bay at Philadelphia. This is, of course, being played in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, so it's not really at Philadelphia, but that's how it's listed. And then Philadelphia, I think, will win this game 38-31. I think it'll be a high-scoring one. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think these defenses aren't terrible, but I do think the offenses are going to outshine them here and put a pretty large number of points on the board. The players to watch here are Jordan Love, Jaden Reed, and Jalen Carter. Obviously, Jordan Love, going into his 2nd season as the full-time starter, showed a lot of promise in his 1st season, won a playoff game. And if he can continue to play well, and maybe one of his receivers, like I listed Jaden Reed, but it could be any of them similar to the Bills here. If one of those guys emerges as a real wide receiver 1, the Packers offense is going to be even better and is really going to keep this team in games and keep them winning games. And then Jalen Carter on the Eagles side, he was really dominant for the first half of 2023, and if he can do that for an entire season, he could be like a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's really an athletic, obviously very athletic, very big and strong guy. And if he can play to the level which he has shown, he's going to make that Eagles defense very formidable. The 4th best game I have this week is the New York Jets at San Francisco. I think San Francisco will win this game 31-28. The return of Aaron Rodgers is obviously the major story here, although there is a lot more to look at than just that. Brock Purdy working in this offense, continuing to just hopefully, for the 49ers fans, hopefully just keep it running like a machine. I mean, every time you watch the 49ers, it just seems like they're going to put up points on offense, and their defense is going to shut down the other team. They seem inevitable in almost every game they play. They're really, really rock solid, and they're retaining almost all of their pieces. Obviously, the big story for them right now is getting Brandon Ayuk back, and Ricky Pearsall, who was shot in the chest. He seems to be doing okay, thankfully. But that is unfortunate because he was a rookie that everyone, of course, was looking forward to watching play, and it looks like we'll have to wait a little bit to see him out on the field. The players to watch here are obviously Aaron Rodgers, and then you have Brandon Ayuk for me. Like Lamb, Ayuk had been holding out this offseason for a contract, so it remains to be seen how he will do, although I don't think it will make too much of a difference. He was really, really good last season, and if he can keep playing at a high level, that 49ers offense will just continue to purr. The big story will be the play of Aaron Rodgers. Historically, he started week 1 pretty slow, but he, I think, will be playing with a fire under him, this being his first, hopefully his first full game starting for the New York Jets. Number 3 this week, the third best game, I have the Los Angeles Rams at Detroit, where I think Detroit will win 30-24. This one may seem high, and it all depends on what you think of the Rams, I think, but I think these two teams are going to both be in contention here this season, and I think they're both going to have really fun offenses to watch. They have a lot of fun pieces on both sides, and they're kind of very similar teams structurally. You have two great offenses and two middle of the road to above average defenses, where a lot of it relies on their pocket passing quarterback. And it's a really fun matchup to watch. Obviously, a rematch of that wild card game from last season where Detroit came out on top in a dogfight. And the players to watch here for me are Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, Jared Goff, and Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell is the only O-lineman I put on here, but it's because he is really fun to watch, and you can really see the plays develop when you see the game through Penei Sewell's eyes and just watch him block and open the plays for his offense. Kyren Williams will have return duties, and fantasy players are waiting to see how that will affect his output, whereas Puka Nacua is coming off a really, really solid rookie campaign and is hoping to build on that. He will, of course, be, I say competing. He'll be working in tandem with Cooper Kupp, who will probably take a little bit of production from him, assuming he stays healthy. And then Jared Goff, who has been playing really, really well the last few seasons, and we're going to see if he can keep his production up this season. I think with all the weapons around him, it's going to be hard not to. It's kind of a Tua Tagovailoa situation where you have so many pieces around you that you're kind of expected to put up these types of numbers, but he has done a really solid job, and I think his praise goes a little bit unsung. So I wanted to put him on here just to kind of bring to the attention of people that he is playing really, really well. And then for our last two games, they are in the cancel your plans tier, where you need to miss a funeral if you have to watch these games. And at number 2, the second best game this week, I have Houston at Indianapolis. I think this game is underrated. I think it's going to be really fun, especially in week 1, seeing two young quarterbacks who are just a joy to watch, really fun to watch. And if you haven't watched CJ Stroud play, it's just a treat. And then Anthony Richardson, coming off of this injury, he is going to be a player to watch this season, assuming he stays healthy and stays on the field. Players to watch here are CJ Stroud, Stephon Diggs, and Anthony Richardson. CJ Stroud obviously has already proven to be a good quarterback, so this game should help us gauge his continued growth. Stephon Diggs is a huge offseason acquisition who should help elevate the Texans' offense even more. The Colts go as Anthony Richardson goes, so he is the most important Colts player to watch this season. If he can stay healthy and productive, he could be a similar guy to Cam Newton, where he's just tearing people up on the ground, in the air, just putting up crazy numbers. It stands to see if Anthony Richardson can stay healthy. It's going to be tough for him the way he plays, but if he can, I think the Colts are going to be really strong this season. And I do have the Texans winning this one 28-24. I just think they're a little bit stronger. And especially on that defensive side, I think the Texans are just going to be a little bit better, keep the Colts in check a little bit, and CJ Stroud is a little bit more proven than Anthony Richardson is for sure. And then the undisputed game of the week here is Baltimore at Kansas City, and I actually think Baltimore is going to pull it off here for a few reasons that I'll get into. But before I get into that, this game is just the clear game of the week here, a rematch of the AFC Championship, two of the best squads on both sides of the ball, really solid defenses and offenses. This matchup will feature two of the best quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, of course. The Ravens, in order to win this game, and I think they can, will need to establish a very strong ground game, and they've got the pieces to do it. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, one of the best running quarterbacks in the league, the best running quarterback in the league. And then also, of course, Derrick Henry, who was acquired in the offseason, who I think will still be very productive. Even as he ages a little bit, I think he'll be very productive, and I think he will be able to bring these Ravens to a victory here in week 1. Kansas City, we saw them start out a little slow last season, and even with pretty much full health, I do think that the Ravens are going to pull away here and take the win. The players to watch here are Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Xavier Worthy. The two quarterbacks are just really fun to watch, so of course watch Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. But Derrick Henry, I think, is going to have a good day, like I mentioned, and is going to continue kind of being better than people expect and continue to be a really, really good running back, especially against the Chiefs, who actually shockingly didn't have a great ground defense last year. That was one of their worst areas, was their rushing defense. So if that continues to be a pattern, I think Derrick Henry really could have a good day. And Xavier Worthy, who I think, even with Rashee Rice there, could become a wide receiver one, or at least kind of a tandem wide receiver one with Rashee Rice. It stands to see what will happen to Rashee Rice. I think his court date is in December for, of course, doing some pretty bad stuff in the offseason with drunk driving a vehicle, getting into a crash. But whatever your opinion is of Rashee Rice, he was the most reliable and best receiver other than Travis Kelce on that team last season. So him and Xavier Worthy really could bring this team's offense up. And with Xavier Worthy on the Chiefs, I just think the team got better. And this one could definitely go either way. Going to be a must-watch game and the clear game of the week for me. And that's every game this week. I'll be back to do the same thing after the games are played and rank how they actually turned out. And that's all for me. Obviously, this is a new thing I'm doing here, so if you're tuning in, I appreciate it. And I'm open to criticism, anything you guys want to say or want to tell me. I'm not great at this. I just wanted to do this for fun and because I am very ADHD and need a passion project. So yeah, I'll do this after the games are played for each of these and rank them as well. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time, hopefully. And rank them as well. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time, hopefully.